Republicans are still likely to control the balance of power in the House, but as you can see, the balance of power, they have not yet reached the magic number of 218 seats needed. The ballot counting, it continues, and we talk about that. Let's bring in attorney Brian Claypool for some clarity on why in the world it is taking so long to count the votes in Arizona and Nevada. Brian, it's always great to see you. Peggy Noonan said this in the Wall Street Journal today. Let's put it on the screen. She says, quoting here, long counts are not only sloppy, they are abusive. It is in the delay between polls closed and outcome announced that the mischief begins. It's where conspiracism takes hold. They stole the boxes with the ballots last Thursday. My cousin's friend saw it. I mean, the slower the count, the lower the confidence level this is, Brian.
Yeah, Trace, great to be back with you. I agree with part of her statement. I think it's sloppy. There's no question about it, especially when there's a lack of transparency. We're not receiving specific updates. But in terms of being abusive, I'm not sure we have evidence of that yet. But if you look, for example, at Nevada, right, that's the heartbeat right now of the Senate.
Right.
They allowed ballots, as long as they were postmarked the 8th, they can be received up until tomorrow, Trace. And then there's a 2-day window. For example, if they saw an irregular signature, there's another 2-day window to call up somebody and say, hey, come in and cure your signature. So you may not get a final count in Nevada till Monday.
Now, we were talking about Washoe County in Nevada because they had some issues there earlier in the week. In fact, I was on Tucker talking about the fact that in Washoe, they had the ballot room. The cameras went off for 8.5 hours. Watch part of this. But to reassure us, Washoe County has now released security footage from the cameras around the ballot room, like the parking garage, the hallway, and the entry doors. They have also checked the staff's security badges to make sure nobody came in or out. And that is reassuring if you believe that somebody with bad intent would walk in through the front door using their security badge. I mean, it's 2022. The whole theme here, Brian, is you're like, cameras went down for 8.5 hours. We're not saying anything nefarious is happening, but it leads people to become skeptical.
Trace, there's no question about it. I think there's two big problems. There's major mishandling of local governments and state governments across the country. If you look at Florida, how great they've done over the years, why aren't states like Nevada, California, Arizona modeling things after that? For example, scanners, right? When these ballots come in, they are immediately scanned. Do you know that? I think in Nevada, I think it's Arizona, they don't even have a scanner in Arizona. They have to physically take these ballots, ship them to a facility, an independent facility to be scanned, and send them back. And now let's look for signature irregularities. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't be happening in 2022.
And that's what happens is all the things you talked about then, the mail-in ballots, all of these scanning problems, they all lead to litigation somewhere down the road.
Yeah, and you can't blame candidates in a close race, right? For example, I know even in LA, it's like, oh, we're going to get an update in 4 hours on new ballots. And I'm thinking, is somebody going to come up from a garage and hand you a note and say, oh, we've got X number of votes for so-and-so? I mean, it really does breed conspiracy and contempt. We need to have more transparency, need to have more oversight. Most important, we have to have improvement in the mechanical aspect of this.
Yeah, you just talked about the LA mayor's race. We thought we would put these numbers on the screen for you so you can kind of, opine on them, if you will. Karen Bass now leading Rick Caruso. This all changed, by the way, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon because you had Karen Bass. There were 30,000 new votes that came in. I mean, keep in mind, you have this concept where over the past several days, you have had some 500 and some odd thousand votes came in, and they were literally less than a half a point apart. And we have 30,000 new votes come in, and all of a sudden, Karen Bass takes 60-something% of those votes, and people are like, well, how in the world did she get all those votes in such a short tranche?
Yeah, another problem we're seeing, Trace, is the lack of enough voting facilities, right? Because like in Florida, there's one voting facility for every 2,500 people. In Arizona, in Maricopa County, for example, one for every 20,000. I don't know what it is in LA, but I had trouble finding a place to vote. When you don't have enough voting facilities, you have a glut of ballots at once, and they can't be counted timely. And in LA, look, in LA, it's big news that we even have a dead heat. Because Rick Caruso, by the way, was a Republican up until the election. We haven't had a Republican.
Up until it was safer to run as a Democrat.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, that's the whole thing is he's a Republican. The truth is, but he's running as a Democrat because in California, you can't win anything as a Republican. My last thing on that, Brian, would be to say, we don't know in Los Angeles where the votes are coming from. At least in Arizona, we can say, well, they're coming from Maricopa County. In Los Angeles, you can't say, well, they're coming from, Santa Monica. Or that's not they're coming from West LA. You don't really know.
Categorical lack of transparency, Trace.
Yeah.
We should be receiving updates on the hour. There should be somebody from the city talking about this to the public every hour. X votes from this location, right? We have to count this many votes. And by the way, we received 500 of those. We got another 500 to do. We should be receiving regular updates on television to assuage the concerns of the public.
Yeah. Good stuff. Brian Claypool, good to have you. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Trace.